Hi, I'm Michelle Stirling for Friends of Science Society. I attended the Global Energy Challenge Forum put on by the University of Calgary's Haskayne School of Business. The topic was carbon tax unpopularity from France to Washington State. The keynote speaker and panel members all seemed puzzled about why a carbon tax is unpopular. Their opening premise is that the economic case for a carbon tax is compelling. But there they were, bewildered, and perhaps some even found it comical to think that the Yellow Vest movement in France was framed as the little guy against the elites. And then they spent the rest of the evening proving that to be the case. The panel consisted of academics and think tank members. There were no out-of-work tradespeople, no retail clerks, no unemployed oil sands professional engineers or professional geoscientists. There were no pensioners on the panel. One panel member, Sarah Hastings-Simon of Pembina Institute, said carbon taxes were an issue for her as she's a mom of twins. Okay. But Pembina Institute is the foreign-funded organization that has pushed for carbon taxes, cap and trade, and ever-increasing costs and pressure on the oil sands. What did that grant letter from Tides to Ed Whittingham say? Something about, destroying the reputation of the oil sands, slowing down production? Well, Pembina Institute were an integral part of the tar sands campaign to landlock Alberta oil. Why would Canada's Energy University have a Pembina person on a panel about carbon taxes at a Haskayne School of Business forum? That I cannot figure out. So, if life is tough for Hastings-Simon as a mom of twins, imagine how tough it is for moms and dads who don't have access to millions of dollars of foreign grants, grants that put most Albertans out of work, as we discuss in these reports. I'd have to say that I'm also concerned about the lack of academic rigor. Here's research showing that the case for a carbon tax is not compelling. It's out of Norway. Norway jumped on the climate change bandwagon early on with a very steep carbon tax back in the 1990s. And the result? Only a 2% drop in emissions. A better solution? Government and industry working hand in hand to reduce all greenhouse gases. These people are supposed to be experts in this field. So why was this view not brought up? Ross McKittrick's name was mentioned. He's a Canadian economist and an academic. And he spoke at our annual event one year. He showed that the economic models for the social costs of carbon, that's the so-called damages, well, those economic models are calibrated to faulty climate models. The climate models run too hot, 2 or 3 times too hot, meaning that carbon taxes are 2 or 3 times too high. McKittrick also noted that normally you weigh the costs of an activity against the benefits, but no one properly does that in the climate accounting world. Of course, the case for carbon taxes would be dismissed. We get huge, huge societal benefits from fossil fuels. So just imagine having heart surgery, heaven forbid, on wind power. The keynote speaker talked about reducing bad behavior, like as if it's bad to drive your F-350 to the job site. Is that a bad thing? And since none of these people on the panel live in the real world, they should maybe try carrying a 60-pound tool belt and a full kit of hand tools in a backpack by bus to the nether reaches of a Canadian city sometime. See if the bus ever gets to that new subdivision or gets there on time. So what I found very odd is that the entire focus was on how to make carbon taxes more politically acceptable, as if the yellow vests in France really have no complaint. Well, let me quote Belgian philosopher, jurist, and author Drew Godefridi. He says, this tax oppression mechanically condemns millions of former middle class and working poor French people to a headfirst plunge into poverty, where they will no longer know how to pay for the necessities of life: heating, fuel, medical care, food. It seems doubtful that the revolt of people is diminishing when the state progressively and aggressively confiscates the means of their subsistence and finally, their dignity. Their dignity. I used to be a career development officer years ago, a subcontractor to Alberta Employment. Most ordinary people have to work very hard to earn their money, and most want the dignity of a job. They want the sense of purpose. They want to earn a living and make their way in life with dignity. Carbon taxes reduce people to poverty. They take hard-working money from one person and they give it to a poorer person because carbon. But unlike regular taxes that pay for roads and hospitals and education, carbon taxes pay for green crony wind farms that don't deliver power. They subsidize electric vehicles for the rich while robbing that subsidy from the poor. They scare off investment, and as industry shuts down or leaves, the elites jump for joy over the drop in emissions, while more people join the lineups at the food bank, wondering what hit them. The keynote speaker had the temerity to tell us to take individual action like solar panels, drive EVs, eat less meat, turn down the thermostat, put on a sweater. He's from out of the States where it's much warmer. None of these measures will save the planet, though they might save you a bit of money. The solar panels will be subsidized for the rich by the poor. They will be totally ineffective anywhere north of the 35th north latitude. These solar panels will be an energy sink, meaning that they will have taken more energy to make the panel than you'll ever get back. This fellow said, eat less meat. That's insane. Albrecht Glatzel, Paraguayan agricultural specialist, has shown that the IPCC analysis of meat is flawed. So actually eat all the meat you want. And if you're in Alberta, eat beef, eat bison, eat lamb, eat pork, eat chicken, because all of these are high in protein and produced right here. And if you plan to go vegan, well, you'll just be leaking your carbon footprint to vegetable gardeners in California and Mexico. None of those veggies will get here by walking, folks. He advised us to turn down the thermostat and put on a sweater. Robert Lyman explains in this video that we shot a couple of years ago that might make you feel virtuous or cold and perhaps might save you a couple of bucks. But the big emitters are China, India, the US. And they kept talking about the transition to renewable energy. Hello, have they not heard the news from Bill Gates and Václav Smil? Bill Gates says we should stop jerking around with wind and solar and batteries because they don't work. And there we have the reason for carbon taxes and a price on carbon. It makes wind and solar farms into a kind of monopoly money generator of virtual cash in the form of tradable, renewable energy certificates. Renewables owners get subsidy treatment, they get special environmental passes through preferential renewables legislation, and this creates a secondary economy that big corporations and banks can take part in. Carbon trading, it's a huge market. And Joanne Nova does a memorable video on this topic. But what is a carbon market? Carbon markets entail the lack of delivery of an invisible substance to no one. Imagine that us peasants think that's a stupid idea, while the elites claim it is compelling. Of course, this is a market that you and I pay for, but we're excluded from. We peasants must be on guard as some want to pass this law, proposed by George Monbiot back in 2006, that every one of us will have a personal carbon ration. And if you run out, you just have to buy more carbon credits from somebody else with more. So how do you think that will work out in a minus 40 Celsius and Fahrenheit Alberta winter? Just as in medieval times, you and I will be the carbon serfs to these lords and ladies. There was no one on the panel to question climate change.
I think the first report I wrote was for the government of Alberta. And the title of that report was Uncertainties in Greenhouse Gas-Induced Climate Change. I wrote that report in early 2000. I identified several uncertainties then. And interestingly, 18 years down the road, I find that the same uncertainties still hold, and there are many more.
And that was supposed to be the underlying purpose of a carbon tax. By taxing carbon, you're supposed to be reducing the emissions and therefore cooling the planet. But recently, scientists have found that the carbon dioxide effect on warming is very, very nominal. There's very little warming effect on the climate. Dozens of academic papers show this to be true. And you would think that a university would be the very first place to trumpet this news. We're saved. We're not going to be in hellscape planet. Ding dong, the carbon tax is dead. Let's save Canada. Quit Paris. Build some pipe. Curiously, the Haskayne School of Business at Canada's Energy University is still flogging this dead horse of carbon tax, and even coming up with solutions to make it more palatable for the peasants, like maybe hiding it from consumers. Friends of Science don't want you to be in the dark. Here's our compendium of carbon tax information for Canadians. There's everything from short, simple little videos to very in-depth technical reviews. So have a look. And if you think a carbon tax is unpopular, there's a very good reason why. For Friends of Science Society, I'm Michelle Stirling.